What's up, everybody? John Maddox here, coming at you with another late night logical, plausible, probable. We're gonna be having an open mic discussion. You never know where we might end up. But I will tell you this, before we're done, we will have put some Evos in their place, because when I'm finished, you done.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Late Night Logical Plausible Probable, doing a one-on-one discussion. We'll have some open room action. We'll be discussing some of the stuff going on over at Discovery Institute with their premiere of an awesome new series they got going on their channel, which was absolutely phenomenal, very entertaining, humorous, and really starting to dive into the nitty-gritty, both from a hey, you know what? Let's stop acting like we don't have foundation and solid scientific logic, evidence, and coherence to our arguments. And let's not just concede on an ongoing basis like we're told we need to do. We just need to concede over and over again. Never, ever, ever, ever consider challenging the status quo. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to do just that. It has been time for quite some time, and I'm glad to see that there are people who are pulling no punches, coming out swinging, and giving no quarter to those who wish to convince us all that there is nothing underlying to our very existence. There is nothing that is necessary external to just the materialistic and the naturalism that is the foundational bedrock of all things in modern academia, the new atheist movements, and all those who wish to run from the obvious reality that there is a necessary higher power, or a higher power is necessary for our very existence. Now, so for those of you coming in for the first time, here's how this works. So tonight we're doing do an hour of one-on-ones. So the link is pinned, and I'll post it in the side chat from time to time. First come, first serve. Come on here. We'll do start a 10-minute countdown timer, which looks a little something like this. And then we'll go for 10 minutes and talk about just about whatever you want. And obviously, assuming it's within reason and we're not getting off into any crazy stuff where you're not being a relatively normal human and not going crazy on me. Yeah, so that's how that works. And then when all that gets wrapped up, we will open up the room. More people can come in. We can kind of have a more open dialogue for a little bit, and then we will call it a night. So also, if there's a guy earlier, AG something or other, my community post, who's been giving me the usual, the genetic code is not actually a code, all those talking points, it's a chemical, not really a code, so on and so forth. The usual godless engineer type rhetoric. And I invited him to come on and allow me to educate him on that topic. So it'll be very interesting to see with all that talking that was going on in typical keyboard warrior style. Be interesting to see if he shows up and supports and backs up his claim. But while we're leading up to that, I'm gonna give everybody a little quick teaser on some of the stuff that's coming up next week. So those of you who follow my channel know this is coming up, but next week, the gigantic interview that I did with Dr. James Tour will be being rolled out, or initially rolled out on his channel, and then it'll come over on my channel after that. But yeah, I spent over 6.5 hours with Dr. Tour. We spent about 3 hours just discussing things he's worked on, his background, what led him to do different things, and then another 3+ hours going through comments and questions, concerns that were raised by people in relation to his Origin of Life research series. And it was very insightful, great talking with him, and I can guarantee everybody you will not want to miss when that comes out, because it's some phenomenal content. that will be being showcased here coming up next week. I know that right now the Good Doctor is on vacation, so kind of pushed everything back a little bit because he's been going and got a chance to go off and see his father. So left at that. But I guess the first teaser will have to wait because we've got somebody has joined the stream. We got Kevin is coming on in. What's going on, Kevin? How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Man, I'm hanging in there. Let me let's get everything started here. All right, so we're good to go. You're up for 10 minutes. So welcome. I know we've interacted before, but what brings you to the stream? What would you like to talk about? And what share for everybody? I mean, I know what you are, but why don't you share it with the audience? Atheist, agnostic, theist. What's your positions?
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I wanted to come by and I've been watching you for a little bit, and I think we talked on Neff's channel before. So I'm an atheist. I'm kind of exploring some of the dialogues with theists right now, and so I just kind of wanted to come on and chat. Really, just kind of get to know you a little better.
All right, sounds good. Well, I appreciate the interest and all that. So go ahead. You got me for 9 minutes and 6 seconds left. So go ahead and ask away.
Yeah. So I guess I would ask first. What is? I know you're a theist, but what is your denomination, or do you have one?
I refuse to embrace the denomination aspect. I actually was talking about this the other day. In my opinion, as I've been watching a lot of these. Why I left Christianity videos, deconversion, deconstruction videos, and such. I've noticed that the vast majority of them are talking about them leaving a particular denominations, and very often it's particulars from those individual denominations, which were the catalyst to them, running away from theism and Christianity in general. And one of the things I've noticed over the last 20 years is a significant percentage of people identified as denomination first, Christian second. And one, I've never really identified with denomination, but I'm Christian first.
Okay, excellent. So and so you are I'm guessing when you say Christian, you're devout to the New Testament and the teachings of Christ himself.
Yeah, I mean look at Christ as a substitution sacrifice to take the place of my sin if I accept the offer of forgiveness, and to be the propitiation for my flaws and my sin. And I think a huge portion of a lot of the other things that have been developed over the millennia into convoluted doctrinal structures. I don't disagree with all of them, but there's some of them some things that I think get taken way too far in the extreme. It's humans doing mental gymnastics, and oftentimes overwhelm the actual point.
So would you say you wouldn't maybe necessarily take all of the biblical accounts literally?
I mean, what are you referring to exactly?
Well, like specifically,
that's a very broad question.
Well, like the claims of miracles, specifically. I guess if we're talking New Testament, a lot of it is attributed to Jesus and his miracles.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have zero issue with the miracles. I mean, the more we learn about quantum mechanics, chemistry, and physics in general, I mean, the acceleration, deceleration, molecular control, I mean, all those things are not that. I mean, it's not magic. I mean, it's just, do you have the ability to control them? if you do, then anything is possible. And I find it very interesting that YouTube atheists specifically like to run around screaming about Magic Man in the clouds and magic and all supernatural. And I'm like, okay, hey guys, open your minds for 2 seconds. We're talking about the ability to control space and time and bend, we're not say bend, but manipulate the laws of physics and chemistry. Like, this is exactly what we're doing. So why is it magic?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I guess the only argument I would have there is that we've only learned these processes through scientific reasoning, right? But there could be some entity that knows this intuitively, right? I mean, that's the kind of the God concept.
Well, I mean, if the God entity is the one that created the rules that we're discovering, then yeah, I would assume that they would understand them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, man, those kinds of questions, I mean, I get them on a regular basis, in that vein, and I honestly get a great amount of entertainment out of them, because to me, it's like, are your minds that small? I mean, we are creating our own universes on the digital scale, right? In video games and all these different things that we're creating right now, and nobody thinks that it's somehow just ridiculous magic and outlandish that we're able to create an environment inside of a computer, right? And in an immaterial sense, because the information that makes it up is housed in a physical object, but it's not actually material itself. And somehow the premise of actualize the same thing in terms of our reality is somehow completely unrealistic. And I'm like, well, if that's unrealistic, then what we're doing is unrealistic.
Well, we do make an important distinction in our works. When we create things as human agents, we label one set of work as a set of fiction, of stories, if you will, and then we have also a catalog of history. If you didn't have a way to differentiate those, say 10,000 years in the future, and you were to find some type of world history book in the 20th century, and also find George Orwell's 1984, you wouldn't really know how to distinguish which was which, right? Without a reference point.
Well, I mean, not necessarily, but there's also, there's also human intellect, and to be honest, this talking point that you're giving right now is, to be blunt, it's like you're insulting your own intelligence. And it's like, it's the same thing with why didn't God label XYZ as design? And it's like, well, because if you have an IQ above 70, you should be able to figure this out yourself, because the necessities that we recognize in any other context to have this sort of thing requires intelligent agency. But we willfully suspend that very straightforward Occam's razor conclusion for convoluted mental gymnastics. And I'm just like, while simultaneously being told that God didn't leave any evidence for us to make the conclusion. I get a kick out of it, to be honest.
I appreciate that, and you've definitely given me some stuff to think about. I appreciate your time. I see we're getting kind of low on the timer here, so yeah, I didn't want to get too argumentative there, but you're very civil conversationalist. I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, in spite of the dogma spewed by many in the YouTube universe, I'm only a jerk if you are. It's like, I find it it's one of the things I get a great amount of entertainment from is different individuals who run around claiming I'm just, the biggest jerk of all time, while simultaneously insulting my intelligence, claiming I don't know what I'm talking about. And then I ask them questions and they can't answer and tell me they don't know, they're not an expert. Therefore, you must be wrong. And it's like, so what's up, pot? And then when I give him what for back, suddenly I'm the meanie. And I don't know. It cracks me up. But you got any final words before we wrap up? I know we got Ogre wants to come in next.
Oh yeah, no, I will make room. But once again, thanks for having me on, and I look forward to the rest of the show.
Right on, man. Appreciate you. Have a good one.
All right.
All right. So first one went off without a hitch. That was nice. Bring Ogre in here in just a second. So for those of you who are wondering, what the heck happened to the first round of the Q&A discussion episode? Well, I used a countdown timer, which apparently somebody has copywritten, and the not even the whole video, only a very short, 30 seconds of it, and those 3 snippets got me blocked. The last one blocked globally. So I've downloaded. I'm rendering a new version of it with a different timer, and I'll upload it again. But then to avoid that in ongoing future, I created my own. Put a little music under it. Was like, you know what? Let's make this a little more relaxing. Have a little ambiance in the conversation, and enjoy ourselves. So what's up, Ogre? How you doing, man? Welcome to the stream.
Hey. I'm not gonna be on too long. I don't know if I'll last 10 minutes. I gotta go to bed, but yeah, I wanted to ask you a physics inquiry, if you don't mind. Get your opinion.
All right, so
I'll wait for the countdown, of course.
Physics. All right, are you coming here to drop me some outlandish zinger from Leophilius?
No, God no. I'm here because I think I was in Praise's channel last night. Cerberus went in there, was talking to people, and the second law conversation came up. I don't know your opinion on that, but people are talking about unusable energy, and it's been on my mind what creationists thought about energy and using it and losing it and stuff like that. I didn't know if that was something you're relevant in. You usually do biology, so you're on. I just thought I'd ask.
I mean, there's always I know one of of course, in the context of the eternal universe, one of the things that gets spewed ad nauseum by Leophilius and others is, oh, well, we're not necessarily in a pocket where the entropy has occurred. So necessarily have to have lost all the usable energy and such. I mean, the cyclical universes and all those kind of things that get talked about, to me, they don't really seem very plausible. I keep using this term, but to me, they come off as crazy mental gymnastics. Okay, I guess that might happen. I don't think that's really feasible and really plausible, but I mean, I can come up with all sorts of crazy hypotheticals too.
So I guess to throw maybe a bit of context on the question, I believe it was maybe Jungle Jogging. I can't remember exactly who, maybe Will, brought up the argument that the universe should use up its energy, and at some point, all energy would be unusable. Are you familiar with that argument or not? Because I had some issues with it, so I wanted to understand it better before I proclaim my issues, Or is that not something you're familiar with?
So I assume that means there could be, just for easy example purposes, there could be a giant, everything has energy contained in it. So
yes,
there theoretically could be a giant asteroid somewhere that never got used. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's why I'm on here, because it's technically your side's quote unquote argument. So I'm trying to figure out what it is more. If that's kind of why I'm here. I'm just
hang on.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to counter you on that one. It's not my side's argument.
okay.
Why do you think the things like this hypothesis are being put forth?
Well, yeah, I guess.
So, I mean, it's the standard model that the second law of thermodynamics would result in a complete dissipation, takeover, increase in entropy, and dissipation of usable energy. Right? Like that is the standard model.
Well,
that's not the creationist model. That's the standard model currently.
So
and now there's other things that are being put forth to try and account for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I it's one of the things that always cracks me up. Like the outlier, non-standard models get spewed ad nauseum by the YouTubers.
So
while simultaneously accusing people like myself who like counter evolution as like arguing against consensus, and I'm like, well, the current conventional paradigm is in my favor in relation from the cosmology perspective. So
I guess the thing that's confusing me about the unusable energy conversation is like it's not something we discussed a lot back in my classes, and when I looked it up, the term the example given was, if a plane is flying someplace, some of the energy used to have the plane fly is lost to, say, heat and friction, and that's how they described unusable energy. I'm trying to understand how that works in a universal concept, because energy is like lost for the individual system of the plane, but like it's not unusable. It's just in a different location, So I'm trying to figure out how a universe could not have energy in the same location.
Well, you also have to
remember, or is my analogy wrong?
Well, it's not wrong, but I think one of the components you're forgetting is that like just because it's all about the usable energy.
Yeah.
Right. So just because something has energy doesn't mean that it's tappable, if you will.
Well, but that's exactly my question. For something has energy that's not tappable, yes. But if you want to say the universe is gaining entropy, and I'm trying to figure out how this concept connects to like the universe, the energy of the universe going someplace else or being unusable, because it would still be within the system and therefore it'd still technically be usable because it doesn't leave anywhere. Unusable energy by definition is not usable to the plane, but still say in the atmosphere and can be used by cloud systems, for example. So the energy is not lost. It's not unusable. In general, it's just unusable to that specific.
Per the law of second law of thermodynamics, the energy is not being lost necessarily.
Yeah. Well, I'm using it,
but being
interchangeably. I probably shouldn't.
But it's dissipation into forms that are no longer usable. I mean, that's the whole point.
Yeah, but unusable to the system, yes, but the universe. But according to that argument, shouldn't unusable energy in the universe be not in the universe anymore in order for the universe to have this unusable energy concept?
No, I mean, it can still be there. I mean, that's like saying that you... I'm trying to think of an analogy here.
Yeah, because the plane analogy for the unusable energy, the energy is no longer usable for the plane, yes, because it's dissipated as heat. But the energy is still it just moves systems from the plane system to the atmosphere system. The energy itself isn't unusable. It's just unusable for the plane. Right. And I'm trying to figure out how that works.
But that's the whole point, man, is if it's no longer usable energy, then you have a stagnant universe. And that's the, with the expansion and everything, that's the whole point, is you're not going to be going from usable. You're going from usable to unusable rather than unusable to usable.
Well, but that unusable is then usable for a different system. The heat from the plane is useful for, say, cloud formation.
Okay, that's okay. So are you suggesting that after you have burned up all the gasoline, that somehow the plane engine is going to be able to reuse the
No, that's
energy.
exactly. That's not what I'm saying.
Well,
The
but that's
plane
the
system
point.
is no longer using
But
energy.
that's the point. But that's the point. In the context from the macro view of the universe, is eventually you're going to use up the energy that's needed in the context that we're talking about, and it's now no longer usable energy.
And this is why I'm looking for a explanation following the analogy of the energy going from the plane system to, say, the atmosphere system. If the universe uses some energy, according to the previous analogy, it needs to go to another system where it goes from unusable to usable. The heat is no longer for the plane, quote unquote, universe. It goes to the atmosphere. So where does unusable energy move to? Right? Energy moves. It's neither created nor destroyed. It goes someplace. So where does it go if it's somehow unusable? It needs, by definition, to be usable someplace else. Right? There's more than one system. For the plane analogy, where's the other system for the universe?
Uh,
And again, if you don't know, if that,
well, no,
you're not physics, I get that. So
I've answered the question the way I know it. So
I guess it's not landing to me then.
Whether or not the temperature of the universe will reach absolute zero or simply a lower overall temperature in the current range of temperatures is unknown. But the idea of universal cooling remains constant. Such death by heat means that the universe may eventually contain no free, usable energy for thermodynamic processes or work. In other words, all energy may become heat energy in a universe going towards thermal equilibrium. By definition, heat is a transfer of energy which requires areas or objects of different energy values. Without a transfer of energy, thermal equilibrium will eventually result in a loss of heat, further reducing the capability for thermodynamic activities that facilitate the existence of most biological life and matter.
So the energy just spreads out too far for things to still use it? Would that be the argument?
I mean, that's definitely a portion of it, but I mean, it's also the form that would be transferable into work would have been used and be dissipated into a form that would no longer enable its transfer to another in context of work energy or energy for work.
I guess I think I follow. I still would want to dig into that concept a bit more, but I'm still having the issue with, like, the energy is still technically in the universe. It's just away from stuff is kind of what it sounds like, right? Like on a macro scale, the universe's energy doesn't change. It just spreads out, evens out, right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Right, but there's different types of energy. And that's the point that was what I just read. There's different, you aren't familiar with that, right? Like there's different types of energy.
Well, I wouldn't say different types. I'd say different uses, right? Energy is energy. Well, electricity and gravity, energy doesn't change. So,
yeah. Okay.
It's timed out.
Different energy values. Right?
Sure.
They're different forms. I guess the point I'm making is there's different forms of energy. This is recognized. So I'm really not understanding why you're having a problem with this one, because I mean this is a relatively well established concept. Yeah, we'll have to see if we can find a video on that, because I know there's I know that premise is put forth in quite a bit of detail.
Yeah, I'm not like saying the cold death of the universe isn't a hypothesis. I'm just trying to figure out how it's an argument. I'm just trying to connect it to the Christian argument, right?
Okay, so again,
that was my issue.
Ogre.
Yes.
This is not the Christian argument.
Well,
okay. I don't know what the putting in the gang have been telling you. It's not the Christian argument. I mean, Christians established the argument, like use the argument in our favor, but we're not the ones that came up with it.
Well, then how it's used would I can change
it was just recognized as holy crap, if this is the case, then it's in our favor. I mean, I was talking about this the other night. This is why it just cracks me up now and be like, oh, Big Bang. I'm like, do you idiots not realize that for like 30 years after the whole premise of the beginning, like a starting point of the universe, like the atheist scientists were like actively trying to figure out ways around it, because they realized that it pointed directly in favor of theism. And then you fast forward to now, and what's still going on it's oh well, we're going to come up with a hypothetical to explain that we know it's a fact now that there was a starting point, but maybe there's a workaround. I mean, that's where we're at now. But anyway, Ogre, I appreciate you coming on and talking. It's always fun. You're always calm, and yeah, it's always fun to talk with you. We don't get into it.
Yeah, hopefully someone will bring the fire eventually. So
we got Linguistes up next. We'll see what happens. He's a pretty nice guy too, though.
All right, take care.
Have a good one.
Hello.
What's going on, Linguist? How
Good
you doing?
morning. Good morning. From Ukraine. Well, we have morning here. I'm doing great. Good to see you, LPP. So, as far as I understand, I'll ask you questions, right? Because I kind of missed out on the last few things. So let me just open up the thing that I have in my mind. So yeah, I have a few open-ended questions. I don't know if you'd be interested in asking these. The first thing that I want to ask you, what do you think is the main reason why people become Christians?
Well, I mean, ultimately, I think that we're hardwired for the realization that we are created and there is a higher power, and then begin to search. From there, I think it's the recognition that it's the model that makes the most sense. I mean,
Okay.
when you look at if Jesus Christ is the Son of God and is the actualized form of God taking human form and putting himself on our plane of existence in order for us to understand and recognize that A, God does exist, B, he loves us, and C, is willing to show that in the ultimate manner, which is obviously in this context sacrifice of his own life.
Okay.
Then I mean, when you really contemplate all of that and then you also contemplate the reality of like the magnitude of our cosmos and all of the things that are necessary for us to exist. I mean, the supreme genius, power, so on and so forth that's required. To me, it puts the whole aspect of existence in an entirely different context. And so that's one component of it. And then if you actually take the time to think and ponder these things and accept the existence of God and that there's a entire another level to your existence, then a lot of the things that get spewed as talking points from a lot of the atheists, at least the ones that I interact with, about why all this bad stuff happen and how could God actually love us if these things happen and whatnot. And I'm like, so from the macro plane of existence of God, he knows the ultimate outcome, and there's like additional layers to our existence.
Okay.
So basically, a huge portion of humans put blinders on. Like we put bags over our heads and be like, how could this happen? And it's like, okay, so you're applying your current finite relativity to eternal existence. That's literally like the baby that does not realize that when you come out of the field of view, they think, oh, if they're not seeing it anymore, it doesn't exist. Like it's vanished, can't possibly exist. We can't see it. It's like that's how I view a lot of the atheist worldview.
Okay, interesting.
I don't know all the answers. Therefore, God can't exist. It's
okay. So the next question. Well, I have to skip like 4 questions probably because it's already 6 minutes left. I'll move to the one that I'm interested in. So, hypothetically, if you became an atheist for some dumb reason, right? Do you think you would become a worse person? How do you think would your lifestyle change?
Well, I could say this much: when I willfully rejected God, I spent a decade engaged in all manner of debauchery. I mean, I get.
Yeah, I remember
get
you told you, but I'm sorry, I have to interrupt
I get
you.
a huge. I get a huge chuckle from a lot of people I interact with who think that I operate from some like holier than thou perspective. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like high probability I've done worse things than you. So
Yeah, the reason I wanted to interrupt you is because I know your
perspective.
story. I want to know after you. So you became a Christian after being an atheist, as far as I remember, right? And so how
We lose you? Linguist, are you there? Oh. Are you there?
gonna be disappearing a lot.
Okay, you're back now. I can hear
So
you.
I was just saying that I know you. I've heard your story. It's a great story, but I'm just interested. Like after you've been a Christian for so long, after you have gained so many habits and so many things, how do you think after leaving Christianity, how would your lifestyle change? Do you think you would go back to the things you used to do before you entered Christianity?
I mean, I would definitely be I would return to being focused, not hyper focused, very focused on the material, for sure. The, what is the, the whole aspects of legacy would become extraordinarily important. And, what am I going to accomplish in the finite period of time that I have left? And the irony is, like, from the flip side of the equation, it's not about not making an impact. It's just which type of impact do I want to make? Which one has the greater return on investment and potential? So, like, before all this stuff happened that shifted my life, I was hyper focused on building a business empire, and I wanted to leave my mark on the world in that context. And yeah, I mean, all this intention, I'm like, I'll do good stuff with the money if I get it and all those kind of things, but not in the same context, which I have now, because I'm having been there when I had money and had money again and lost money. I mean, all that kind of stuff. Like, I recognize that there's only so far you can go. And sometimes you have to go through a roller coaster in order to be able to truly understand different, multiple people's perspective, and really to have witnessed it, seen it, and realize they were for the grace of God, but for the grace of God, there go I. And I think a lot of times and I've interacted with many of these folks, people that have always been in that idyllic bubble. They like to do things and makes them feel better about the awesome lifestyle they get to lead, but it doesn't. They're not operating from the same plane, I guess.
Okay, thank you. So another question I would ask you: what do you think is the reason why Christians specifically become atheists?
A large portion of it is a lack of knowledge, and not necessarily just by them, but a lot of times by people that surround them. There's a very aggressive move from a information transfer perspective to propaganda logic to target people who are of low informed. Just the same thing in politics. Like, there's low information voters. Well, there's low information Christians, and very often people have no real foundation in knowledge. And when they walk out into the real world, a lot of times those the threats and the aggressive moves that are being made. I mean, let's get real. There's a whole movement of the anti-theist, right? To actively attempt to take out those people that are weak. And I don't mean weak I'm not bashing those people. I'm talking about weak from a knowledge perspective. And there's a great deal of, like I said, organized propaganda that when they go and quote unquote search, they immediately get overwhelmed by all these supposed pieces of evidence that just completely and utterly annihilate everything about what they've been taught. and they immediately go and like start talking to the people they view as the experts that are supposed to be able to answer their questions, and it turns out many of those people are every bit as ignorant as they are. And when those people can't answer their questions, it's oh crap, I guess all these people that have been telling me that all this stuff is made up and is BS, I guess they were the ones that were right after all. And then they do an immediate pivot, and now it's oh man, I've just wasted my whole life. I've been wasting my life up to this point. What all sorts of fun stuff have I not been doing? And makes them go on a aggressive 180-degree pivot.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll also ask you this last question. Why do you think people become Muslims compared to how do you describe Christians? And do you think there is any possibility of some other religion being true? Thank you. I'll go.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. It was good talking with you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think a lot of the, not all, but a portion of the people converting to Islam, I think that stems from the reality that the vast majority of people are searching for some meaning, some sense of understanding, some insight into the cosmic, into the eternal, and an answer for their very existence. And while the modern quote unquote church has been, not all, but a huge portion of it has become very stagnant and, just takes things for granted. And the Muslims are extremely aggressive. And, when you back to the point I was making a few minutes ago about the lack of solid foundation that many supposed Christians have, they're unable, many of them are unable to countermand, to realize the differences and to be like, oh, okay, well, I see what's happening here. This is a spin. This is a attempt to, convert me, which, I get that. It happens in all aspects of religion. But now to answer your question in relation to could other religions be true, the truth of the religion is a different context than whether or not I think that all people are doomed if they're not Christian in the modern context. I think there's multiple aspects of Scripture that would lend openness to not necessarily being part of the church in the biblical sense, and also not being sent to eternal hellfire and damnation, which is it's one of the things I find very interesting about some of the conversations and the supposed why Christianity is so horrible. It's all about the fear, and it's the fear factor and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, well, I'm not saying there are people who have definitely taken it and spun it to that end, into the extreme, but there's also shades of gray in there that, both from the Old Testament and the New Testament perspective, that are glossed over in the modern era and are completely ignored by large portions of the atheist community. But anyway, all right. So we do it's 10:31. Okay, so we got time for one more, and then we'll go into a open room for about 45 minutes, and then we will call it a night. And while anybody's deciding if they want to be the next one-on-one, I'll share a quick little teaser from the Dr. Tour interview that'll be coming out next week. So for those of you who haven't seen any of these, it's going to be epic. It's going to be epic, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see. This is one that part of our conversation, my conversation with Dr. Tour that I really liked. It's because this is such a ongoing standard talking point for a bunch of YouTube atheists. We'll let Dr. Tour address it. Is it necessary to propose an alternative view to our current understanding of abiogenesis to show that an understanding of abiogenesis doesn't work? Like, the reason I'm asking that question is very often people say, oh, well, unless you put forth a entire model to explain it, you can't claim that abiogenesis is, not possible or implausible or improbable because you haven't put forth another model. In your area, as a scientist, as a researcher, would somebody actually, if somebody said that, like, oh, well, you can't claim that this reaction can't happen because you haven't figured out how it could happen, would anybody take that seriously? I'm talking about on the chemistry level.
Not in my world. So what we teach our students is that if you want to show the mechanism, you don't have to come up with a new mechanism to shoot down an existing mechanism. If the facts don't hold up for that existing mechanism, boom, you dismiss that mechanism. Doesn't work. They don't say, hey, no, you can't dismiss that until you come up with an alternative. Not at all. That's not the way that we teach science. So just because I don't have an answer for abiogenesis does not mean that I can't take down the hypotheses that are there, the suggestions that are there. I mean, if the facts are not fitting the hypothesis, then we just yank that thing down. So in my world, this is the way we teach students how to do science, actually.
Yeah, I got a good chuckle out of that in our conversation, and I know I've heard all of these rumors that supposedly Wannabe Dave will be rolling out his countermand to Dr. Tour's Origin of Life series and just going to showcase to the world how Dr. Tour just did not understand Origin of Life and didn't understand autocatalytic facets of Origin of Life research and all these different things. And I'm really hoping he does. I really am hoping that Wannabe Dave will roll out this series because he's just given the good doctor so much to work with. It's some good entertainment for sure. Good entertainment for sure. Let's see. Let me see. I'm gonna do one more. Or we just see if anybody else wants to come on in. Where is that? Where did I put that? Okay, so I talked a little trash and I sparked him and he finally came on in. He's been coming to my streams for months and months. Never comes on when I'm on. He shows up as soon if I'm gonna pass out, he'll hop in 30 seconds before I leave. But oh my goodness, we have the one and only Standing for Truth has decided to grace us with his presence. We're gonna have a one-on-one. What's going on, Standing? How are you?
Hey, buddy. I heard you talking a big game, so I thought I'd step up and show you who's boss. I'm sick and tired of that pseudoscience nonsense that you're pushing.
Well, we can only go so far in trying to apply this creationist God of the Gaps, supernatural, magic man in the clouds, powder puff action. And I just kind of operate from the perspective that you don't back up your BS, man. I'm just saying.
Well, here's the thing. I'm really, really hoping over the summer to land a spot on Team Dodgeball. So I decided to devolve my arguments. And what I've done is I've made a document where I've listed 20 already debunked talking points. That what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a bunch of debates and I'm going to repeat them over and over and over again, hoping people don't notice. When in fact, the only ones that aren't noticing would be my, small little support group. So it's been a long road, but I think one day I may even be able to attain MVP such as Gutsick Gibbon. I mean, I've never seen somebody repeat already demolished talking points so many times. So it's going to be a lot of work, but I think the chance is there. And another thing too is just a walking fish. He's a tough one to beat because this guy is on Speed of Satire's channel talking about how LPP won't have a discussion with him. And yet, not just tonight, but also last night, here's John for 3 hours, ready and willing to have that discussion. And where's just a walking fish? Swimming around, avoiding LPP. So, team dodgeball, dodging, ducking, dipping, diving, and dodging all over the place. No wonder they're so irrelevant. And no wonder they've dodged debates with any informed creationist. I mean, look at Erica. She's lost so many debates. I mean, how many times in a debate does she say, I'm not a geneticist. I'm not a biologist. I'm cornered again. So I'll just make a damage control video after the debate. No wonder they won't debate informed creationists, but we're having a blast putting on debates almost every single week. Isn't that right, John? So, yeah, what do you think? What are my chances of landing a spot on Team Dodgeball, John?
Well, I would say if you are willing to do a absolute paradigm shift in your worldview, pretty much every component of scientific, premise that you espouse, if you will just debunk all of them, I think you might be able to walk on. However, I would say that there may be some lingering animosity, and you might end up on the bench.
Bench warmer, eh? I'll have to contact Diaper Dino, and I'll have to see how it feels to be full-time bench warmer. What do you think about Waterboy? You think Waterboy would be? I'd have to ask Jackson Wheat and RJ Downard. I know they've been fighting over the Waterboy spot for a couple of years now. Have you noticed that those two? I don't think they've gained a new subscriber in like 2 years. Have you noticed that? RJ Downard's at the same subscribers that he's been at for like 2 years since I demolished him. And in my first formal debate on Modern Day Debate was with RJ Downard. And that was the moment I realized, wow, if dodgeball was a skill, this guy's got it.
Well, it's interesting that Downard was your first debate on MDD. He was also my first debate on MDD. And I agree with you that the subs have not increased, because I remember checking out his channel and being like, oh man, he's got like 1,200 and something subs. Right. And of course, I had literally started my channel the day before the debate. Mm-hmm. And I think the only video I had on there was like, tomorrow I'm having a debate with RJ Downard. But no, I went into it from a like, man, well, it was kind of interesting actually going into that debate. I was like, I had no idea how it was going to be, and I was not nearly as knowledgeable as I am now. And it's like, but you know me, I've never been afraid to go into verbal combat, mental.
Stop. Well, then listen, there's no spot for you on Team Dodgeball, okay? Because only people who are terrified to step in the ring and actually have a dialogue about disagreements can have a spot on Team Dodgeball. So I'm sorry, John. You've actually got guts. You're a brave man, so keep going. I apologize for the interruption, my good sir.
I don't know, but I was going to say, like, it's I'll tell you the thing I found very fascinating over this past year is, while obviously your game has increased dramatically, I know mine has, Matt has, I mean, everybody, our knowledge base has just expanded dramatically. And the point you were making about the debunking of the talking points, rising to the occasion with the, the ongoing assaults and the insults and the accusations that we don't know anything and are just completely ignorant and making things up and whatnot. And all of our cherry picking. It's like, I'll tell you, here's one of the things I find the most fascinating about the cherry picking accusations, right? Is it's like the YouTube Evo atheists are very proud of the premise that they can't actually reach any conclusions. Like, right. They will only reach whatever conclusion they're told. Man, that's some serious thunder right there. I don't know if you heard that.
I did.
Thunderstorm coming through my my neck of the woods. But anyway, I'm like, it always fascinates me. I'm like, and you've heard me talk about this in context of like entrepreneurship and just being willing to go and challenge the status quo and all that kind of stuff. I know you've done it yourself, and it's like, it always fascinates me how YouTube atheists are like, you're bad because you challenged consensus. You thought for yourself. Oh my goodness. Whoever would think for themselves? I'm like, people who aren't pawns. How about that?
Right.
I apologize for not being a sheep. And if you guys don't think, like, are you guys claiming you don't have the intellectual quotient to be able to reach a conclusion based on reading the evidence for yourself? Like, yeah, I'm going to read the conclusions put forth by the folks, but I can also analyze the data and, come to some of my own conclusions too. Like, that's what you're supposed to do when you get beyond, like, well, I guess in this context, I guess these days, like when you get past grad school, you're allowed to think for yourself, sort of. But anybody before that, it's like not supposed to think anything other than what they're being told by the professors.
Well, that's why when we get into it with these guys, like in my debate with Bill Tavis the other day, the genetic boundary study, right? Or the Y chromosome paper with chimpanzee and humans, what they'll do is they will blindly believe the conclusion. And if we, being critical thinkers, challenge the conclusion and challenge the assumptions, when in fact you could read about the built-in assumptions directly in the papers themselves, then suddenly we're going against the consensus, or we are anti-science, when in fact it's the Bill Tavises of the world and the team dodgeballs of the world that are blindly believing the conclusions of these papers. For example, I mean, Gutsy Gibbon has become so irrelevant, it's hilarious. So Ron Matt and I put out a video, as you know, that was 2 hours demolishing endogenous retroviruses and stated clearly. And Erica, she puts out a video the other day attempting to debunk my chapter in one of my books about 4 books ago. The arguments she's putting forth in this really sad comedy of a series I've addressed in my follow-up books and directly in debates. It's funny, but the arguments she's using, we demolished specifically in that stated clearly video. And this whole retrotransposon and the functions associated with them, right? As we talk about, John, you know how we always ask, okay, show us one paper of a non-functional retroviral-like element going from non-functional to functional. To this day, we still have not been provided one. And in an after show, after I debated Dr. Garrett, Erica asked Dr. Dan for that paper, and he completely pivoted, okay, because he's a professional dodgeball player. And for some reason, he went to vestigial organs in Wales or something, because he knows there's no paper. Speed of Sound admitted there's no paper. They don't answer the questions. They just dodge all over the place, and they misrepresent our position. And it's funny. It's funny. So the point is, John, they'll read these papers where these retrotransposons are functional in determining cell types, functional in the immune system, functional in terms of cell stress responses, and they'll blindly believe the co-option. For example, in a paper that I have on ALU sequences and how important and essential they are for a variety of cell processes, one specifically in the brain, they give no answer in the paper for how these functions were co-opted or adopted, right? They just call ALU sequences and the functions associated with them engines of evolution. So these evolutionists, they don't know how to think for themselves. They just assume, okay, these functions must have just popped up somehow, or the paper's conclusion said engine of evolution. They don't know how to think for themselves. So that's why when you ask them for a paper demonstrating their argument, they dodge all over the place. It's hilarious. John, how does it feel to actually be able to critically think? Is that a good feeling, John?
To be honest, I don't know how I could make it through life without the ability to do critical thinking. It really is quite it's quite fascinating. I tell you what, I was, as somebody who's been an employer, I recognized that critical thinking skills were plummeting. But it was not until 2020 and my interactions on YouTube that I realized we are in full scale free fall in relation to critical thinking skills. And yeah, I think it's very interesting. I wonder what what could be quantified in relation to the increase in atheism and nons and the decline in critical thinking skills. I wonder if there might be a corollary there. What do you think?
Oh, repeat that last part, brother.
Did I robot?
No.
I was saying, I wonder if there would be a corollary between the decrease in critical thinking skills and the increase in atheists / nons, the NONES.
Yes, for sure. I would assume, especially because of all the atheists we've interacted with. I mean, how many open mics have we done? John, you must be getting up there in debates too. I mean, after the Bill Tavis debate, I think I've had close to 100, between 80 and 100. And you're getting up there too. And what's the common denominator with all of these atheists? It's the lack of critical thinking skills. And it's the willingness to just blindly believe the conclusions of these papers and the conclusions
that they haven't.
scientists.
The conclusions of the papers they haven't read, and they adamantly claim they wouldn't be able to understand them. Therefore, neither could you, even if you have read them. I tell you that crap that I had over on Amy's channel the other night,
That was
where they were giving me all this grief about you don't have a PhD in X, therefore you couldn't possibly understand Y. And I'm just like, so I that is just the antithesis of any man.
Whoa, John. It's the end of the world over where you're at.
Yeah, it's Armageddon, I guess. Actually, sidebar before I forget about this. So real quick, folks, I'm gonna play a short, and this is where the brainwashing and the propaganda that I was talking about earlier are on full display, right? So as we all know, next week the Dr. Tour interviews gonna be rolling out, but one of the things that in Wannabe Dave's video is
actually, let me stop you right there, LP. Just one second, because the dodgeball queen is in the chat. Herself is in the chat. I'm gonna ask right now. Okay, now she's gonna pretend like she's not listening or something. Okay, it's something hilarious, but let's give her 15 minutes to send us the best paper she has that empirically demonstrates the co-option of an endogenous retrovirus, a pseudogene, an ALU sequence. Okay, so we're going to wait here and we're going to see what finally, after just a year of debates and her dodging and saying in debates, I'm not a geneticist. So you're going to continue saying what you were saying, John, but we're going to give her, let's say 15 minutes. To provide us the best paper demonstrating a non-functional endogenous retrovirus, ALU sequence, whatever, lots of choices, okay? A DNA element of some kind, going from non-functional to functional. So Dan couldn't do it. Speed of Sound admitted they don't exist because it takes too long. Let's see if Gutsy Gibbon can finally answer one question. Since we've answered every question and demolished all our challenges, let's see. Very simple question I've been asking since my second debate with her, and she admitted she didn't have in that debate. But it's been a year. So, John, you continue, and we'll see if that paper pops up in the chat. Okay, brother?
That'll be interesting to see if that occurs. So one of the things that's going to be very ironic, I hope people will pay attention to in the this clip I'm about to play. So not only does, as I'll prove beyond doubt momentarily after that, but did he misrepresent Dr. Tour? However, he did point out some things about DNA and the genetic code and such that many of the YouTube atheists claim don't exist, which is very ironic. It's like, so we've got Wannabe Dave, who at least recognizes, different components in the information that's necessary for life to exist, right? While simultaneously claiming that Dr. Tour doesn't understand what information is, which I thought was priceless. So let's just put the evidence on the table, and then we'll observe the blatant propaganda move done by Wannabe Dave.
It's also incredibly anti-intellectual. We can't make planets and stars either. Does that mean nature can't have made them spontaneously?
There would be no inherent information in the DNA. But even if we gave them the DNA in the structure that they wanted, they wouldn't know how to put all the components together.
This is just nonsense. He is saying there is no information inherent in the DNA when DNA is inherently information because of the way genes code for proteins when expressed. Jim is way out of his element when it comes to informatics. Then he says something unintelligible about how if the DNA was provided, we still wouldn't know how to put the bacterium together. Again, this is ridiculous, because the DNA is literally what contains the instructions to put the bacterium together. I find it hard to believe that Jim does not understand how gene expression works, so this may just be dishonesty on his part.
So before we go on to the annihilation of that, did you pick up on that, SFT? Like the fact that I wonder if Wannabe Dave realizes that what he was talking about in terms of gene expression and coding, the coding of the sequences and the information stuff. I wonder if he realizes how many YouTube evotards adamantly claim that none of that exists. What do you think?
Yeah, that's kind of telling. I don't know. That's funny.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it? Like,
It is.
even though he's being a lying sack about Dr. Tor, he's calling him out on being ignorant of what the vast majority of the people that we debate claim is not true.
Right.
Like, this is too
Doesn't
good.
exist.
This is too good. Oh, okay.
Wait. That's why I constantly point out these evolutionists put themselves, without realizing it, between a rock and a hard place. And for example, like Dave did, Bill Tavis, our best friend, did that the other day because he holds to this whole position that evolution glorifies God and evolution is just creation over time. And he was agreeing with my points about how highly compressed the DNA code is and the fact that it's nested with overlapping functional codes. It's polyfunctional and polyconstrained. He was agreeing with that essentially. So it took him like 3 or 4 rebuttals to finally admit or answer my question about what does he feel about junk DNA? Because people like Bill, these theistic evolutionists, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, because if they admit, yeah, most of the genome's functional, well, that means genetic degeneration occurs rapidly. But if he holds to the junk DNA position, like a lot of evolutionists, such as Team Dodgeball, well, then that's easy to destroy. That's easy to demolish. I mean, holding to junk DNA is indefensible. So these evolutionists are constantly putting themselves between a rock and a hard place, just like Dave did. Yeah, I just wanted to point that out. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, it is. Well, as I've made jokes before, but the longer I hang out on YouTube, the more I think this is actually true. I'm telling you, atheists some are public, but all are private masochists. I'm just telling you. All right, so let's now prove beyond all doubt that Wannabe Dave was both being manipulative and a propaganda artist. And yes, I must let Dr. Tor's words speak for themselves. And remember, folks, what you're about to hear is the full context of what that little clip that Dave took and misrepresented.
We do not know how to build even a simple bacterium. The simplest bacterium with its 256 protein coding genes, we have no idea how to build it. First of all, we don't know how to build the molecules, the 4 classes of molecules that are needed for it. We don't know how to, even if we had those 4 classes of molecules, assemble them even into the simplest of bacteriums. We don't know how to do that. One can do that with the technologies we have today. We can make technologies, but we can't even make the simplest bacterium. Anybody who would say something contrary does not know what they are talking about. Show me the demonstration. Nobody has ever done it. And it's not because of lack of effort. It's not because of lack of will. First of all, they haven't been able to get the molecules to do this. And if they could make the molecules, even if we were to give them the molecules, they wouldn't have the information. There would be no inherent information in the DNA. But even if we gave them the DNA in the structure that they wanted, they wouldn't know how to put all the components together because of the sophistication within a cell. the interactomes, meaning that the interacting connectivity between the molecules, the van der Waals interactions, all of these have to be in the right place and in the right order for a cell to function. We don't even know how to define life, let alone knowing how to spark it to begin.
Yeah. So obviously, way more context than how Dave tried to portray that. And then for those in the audience who don't know this, and I found this when Dr. Tour told me this, I just started cracking up. I'm serious. I was just laughing my tail off. So
John, actually, no, keep going. I'll wait till you finish your thought.
I was going to say, so all these people who run around claiming that Dr. Tour doesn't know anything about biology, he's not a biochemist, therefore he can't understand origin of life, all those kind of things. He doesn't understand DNA, all this. So it turns out that one of the 14 companies that Dr. Tour has started in the last 6 years, 2 of which have gone public, by the way, one of them happens to be a company whose primary focus is data storage in DNA. And not only that, using DNA and creating ways for it to interact directly with silicone-based computers for data storage and reading and writing. I mean, it's like you can't make this stuff up. We've got complete idiots like Wannabe Dave claiming that Dr. Tour doesn't understand that there's information in DNA when he literally, not figuratively, literally started a company for that express purpose.
Right.
And to interact, and they're creating ways for it to interact with our computer technology. Like, get out of town. Oh, wait. Oh, and by the way, they also have a contract with DARPA. So there's that. So yeah, I'm just saying, like, for all these folks who claim that we don't know and we're talking about this kind of thing, it's like, well, apparently DARPA thinks it's real. So I don't know what to tell you, man. Why don't you go to DC and tell them all how they've just been duped by the creationists? And it's just like I told a good old godless engineer in my little call out of him, like, dude, fly over to London, go to the Royal Society and tell them to save their 10 million, or don't be a part of the $10 million prize for the genetic code being a real code. Because, you know, again, per his words, the only people who ever said this or ever thought this are creationists, just like you. Just saying. Go ahead.
Well, it's like Dr. Tour was saying, and we were touching on this with Dr. Gordon Wilson. I mean, think about how many interviews we've done. Think about your interview that we've yet to see with Dr. James Tour. I mean, we've got these naturalists, atheists, evolutionists. We've got them cornered. I mean, they can't deal with any of the evidence. It's a great time to be a creationist. I mean, every single day. I mean, we were discussing last week. I mean, how many shows did we put on? How many interviews? How much amazing information just glorifying God and demolishing the naturalism. Just even in 1 week, it's just a great time. I mean, these poor evolutionists, I don't know how they can, for example, that interview with Dr. Gordon Wilson, how you can be an atheist after watching that is beyond me. For example, we were talking about how, as you know, John, the evolutionists, they have no way to, they can't explain how to introduce functional information into the first life. Right. Like Dr. Tour was saying, if you gave them all the chemicals, you gave them all the molecules necessary for life. Okay. They had all the building blocks of life. They still can't introduce information. So the point is the information storage system that they deny, right? Like Wannabe Dave, could not have been built up from inadequacy to precision. It had to have all been there from the start. So it's just so funny. Give them all the building blocks and they still got nothing. They wouldn't know what to do with it. I yield.
Well, by the way, folks, room is open for, we're not going to do open room for all that long because I'm tired. We're going to have to call it a night here shortly. So if you want to come on in, have a conversation, link is pinned at the top. Come on,
John,
in, folks. Yeah.
So Andrew in the chat says that I've got the same arguments apparently. Okay, so Andrew, the guy, every time he's in an open mic with us or the couple debate, and he's a nice kid. Hopefully we can get him converted one day, and at least he's willing to talk. But every time he's here with us, I've always got a new question and argument for him that he has to say, what? I don't know. I'll look into it. The other day was orphan genes. During the debate with me, it was, the Y chromosome data, the mitochondrial DNA data, the functional endogenous retroviruses data. Always something, right? Which is fine. You can't know it all. But I just find it funny that he's trying to say that I haven't had anything new in a while. But apparently every time he's here with us in live discussion, he doesn't have an answer to any of my questions or our questions. And that's why he goes on to Speed of Satire's channel for damage control. And it's the echo chamber where Speed of Sound can say things like, don't worry, Andrew. We know where orphan genes come from. Genetic entropy is not a real thing, kind of thing. I yield. I just find that funny.
One of the things that always cracks me up about that group is they have their little intervention meetings about we need to stop interacting with all these creationists. Anybody who believes in intelligent design, we need to stop engaging with them. But then every single one of their streams is about exactly that topic.
Yeah, exactly.
I get so much entertainment from that. It's it just cracks me up. It's almost guaranteed. I can click over, I can go into a weather report, click usually no more than twice, and it'll be
yeah, exactly.
Maddox, blah 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 blah, and it'll be a little exposition about how horrible I am. And then I click over a couple places and they'll be blah, blah, Maddox, then I'm like, oh, this is good stuff. And the other day they did one because the night before I had joked. I'm like, I wonder if this is going to be inspiration for the next weather report, right? And then, sure enough, yeah, well, Maddox was joking about this being inspiration for our weather report. I don't think we should give him the time of day. So they waited until the next freaking day to discuss the stream that I had joked it was going to be inspiration for the next weather report. So they postponed it.
I love it too. Day. I love it too. It's quit engaging with them, because he's admitting every time they engage with us, they lose and get exposed. They need their echo chamber, but they also think we need them. They have been irrelevant. Team Dodgeball has been irrelevant for how long? A couple months now. And we still have nonstop discussions, debates. There's always pseudoscience pushing atheists out there for us to get into the ring and show how ridiculous fish to fisherman evolution is and how evidence-based creation and intelligent design is. There's always going to be atheists. It's not like we need Speed of Sound. And it's so funny because Speed of Sound has said things like, oh, Standing never, jumps into my channel. I have been on Speed of Sound's channel so many times, even after a debate I had recently. I can't remember. I think it might have been with Andrew Cumming. I jumped in there actually for hours and hours where we discussed genetic entropy. Speed of Satire had no answers to it. I've been in there for a couple hours one time debating him, Immutable Destiny, and Walking Fish at the same time on human evolution. They had no answers then. So it's how many times are we going to go in there, refute the same talking points? It gets boring.
It does. Well, here's the thing though. There's always new fish. And it's I'm just making this off the top of my head as I'm going along here, but I was going to say that YouTube atheists are like salmon. They always come back to spawn and try to jump up the shoals and such. Most of them don't make it. The few that do die. It's very sad.
It is very sad. And it's funny. We were talking in the chat 3 years ago, before you, before myself, before a lot of us, and even to Film Free, Brother Neff wasn't really all of that active, and YouTube was pretty much run by atheists. The open mics was all these atheists. Non Sequitur Show was hosting just the worst type of debates, as in they were so poorly moderated. And it was really only Kent Hovind doing the debates. And Kent Hovind's the man, as in he's always been brave, as in he just debates anybody. But he'd go in there and it would be like the moderators and the debater versus Kent. These debates were ridiculous. And then I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to get in there. I'm going to start a channel. And then over time, we all kind of came together, met each other, you know, you, Rob, Matt, and Nephilim Free, so on and so forth. Kent and I established a relationship. He's always looking for debates. And we actually moderate the debates fairly, right? Even though obviously I'm adamantly a young earth creation, as you know, when I'm moderating, I mean, I don't even really make a facial expression. I allow the debaters to debate, something that Non Sequitur Show didn't do. Point is, it's just funny looking at the YouTube world now, John, and 3 years ago. I mean, we've kind of taken over. We've stepped up, and the evolution has got nothing. Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Listen, man, this is proof of punctuated equilibrium.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Don't let Bill Tavis hear that. I know he loves
punctuated equilibrium is proven beyond all doubt now that the theists are making a comeback and overtaking. I mean, I guess it's just proof of survival of the fittest, and you know,
it's
you
true.
know, but yet, irony of ironies, I think our position is more in line with heterozygosity, since ours has been around, you know, more foundational than the new atheist worldview. So there's that. But you know, it really is funny how how weak their positions are. The level of faux confidence is priceless, to be honest.
Right. And that's why, you know what, Andrew, we love him. He's always willing to come in the open mics and have some good talks. But that's why I don't have any sympathy for your, you know, members of Team Dodgeball, right? Because for myself and you as well, you just experienced it the other day. You were in a stream with like 10 atheists. It was 10 on 1. My first year on YouTube, no joke, every single night I was jumping into atheist streams where it was like 5 on 1, 6 on 1. I was on Skylar Fiction's channel where it was 10 on 1. I was doing debates everywhere, right? And I literally get atheists now. Why don't you leave your home turf and do a debate? Or, you know, we're not going to come into your open mic because it's not fair. It's like, are you kidding me? We've been doing that this whole time. You just did it the other day, and that was such a great stream. I mean, it was 10 on 1, and you were clearly the teacher there, John. That was so much fun. You had them all just speechless. I mean, 10 of them, and not one of them could formulate a coherent rebuttal to what you were saying.
I was rather entertained by that James Tome, whatever his name is, the PhD in climatology. I was gonna get a chuckle out of that guy.
Which one is it?
Like, the dude he's the climatologist, PhD. He was just talking all the trash about like you can't possibly understand anything unless you have you know, the newspaper.
I remember.
And that guy was cracking me up more than any of them. I'm just like, I know you're not actually an idiot, but you're really sounding like a moron. is what was getting me. And the part that I really find funny about those kind of guys, it's like, I know from business that little clown shows like him are extraordinarily docile in the face-to-face interactions.
Right.
Like extreme, because I've sat in the board meetings and stuff, in the conference rooms and stuff with people like him, and it's like they get all hyped up about their little like hyper specialty, and then outside of that have basically nothing of substance whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I think, a portion of, I'm using him as an example, a portion of where a lot of these academics come from in their like dismissal of anybody having, that's not like them, having any kind of opinion. It's like they actually are afraid of the fact that they're ignorant as flying you know what. And it's like, yeah, congratulations on being a hyper specialist in your little freaking niche.
That's exactly.
I've actually made it a point to have as broad a scope of knowledge as possible.
Yeah.
So that I can have the ability to view the big picture.
Exactly.
And then when I identify something that is necessitates a greater expansion of knowledge in a specific area, then I'll focus on that, right? But at the same time, if you don't have the ability to see the big picture, you're blind to 90%, like by default. And it's one of the things I've really been analyzing about this, these interactions and stuff. I'm like, some of these things, I'm like, how can you not be seeing this? This is such basic critical thinking skills and like putting two and two together and whatnot. And I'm like, I don't understand how hard this is. Like, this is not that complicated.
Yeah, you nailed it, brother. So they have tunnel vision, these PhD evolutionists. They've hyper specialized in a field where they can't see the bigger picture. It's out of their view. And that's why oftentimes you'll notice when you debate these PhDs that hold to Pons come to people evolution, hold to naturalistic origins, whatever, they're oftentimes easier to beat in a debate, or easier to corner than just some of your YouTube atheists who have done a lot of reading or have spent a lot of time trying to debunk creation or something, because they're so hyper specialized. I mean, look at Dodgeball Dan. I mean, you take him out of his tiny little field and he's in deep water. He can't swim. I debated Dr. Stefan Frello like 2 years ago, and no joke, 90% of my opening statement, Frello had to respond by saying, well, those aren't my fields. So, but then they're so confident that they're right, that the model they hold to is right. But yet they're looking at it through tunnel vision. Like you said, they're so hyper specialized, they can't see the bigger picture. So you nailed it.
I don't know what you're saying, but you must be wrong.
Exactly. And that's why it's so funny when it's like, I don't know, go ask the PhD, like, T-Jump. He's funny. When I debated him, I was asking him questions. He said, I don't know, ask a biologist, right? And I said, I did ask a biologist and they don't have an answer either. And then T-Jump actually set me up a debate with his biologist friend on T-Jump's channel. And I did the debate on his channel. And I asked him the same types of questions. I asked him for a paper showing me co-option, actually empirically showing me co-option. And his friend, who was a biologist, we debated for an hour and a half. He said, if I told you I could show you one, I'd be lying. He admitted. But yet they won't admit that what they have is philosophy. They won't. It's just sad. I'll say this and I'll yield. I say you nailed it. A lot of these PhDs are hyper specialized and they can't see the bigger picture. While, like you said, we strive to be well-rounded, right? Where we can see the bigger picture for what it is.
I'd say it was kind of funny in the interaction the other day, the stream we were talking about, when I made the statement that one of my macro objectives was to be, from an information standpoint, I wanted to be the modern equivalent of Renaissance man. And they laughed at me and spoke of that concept with derision. And I'm like, okay, so you're claiming that it's somehow a negative to want to have a high level of knowledge in a variety of disciplines. Like, that is exactly what the standard was, you morons. Like, the greatest minds that have ever lived were masters in multiple disciplines.
Right, exactly.
Like, that was and actually that wasn't as rare, even though it's the greatest minds. Like, that concept is not the rarity that it is now, right? Even 150 years ago, people that were educated, they'd go and get, be educated in a variety of fields. And they were chemists and physicists and mathematicians and engineers, all this other kind of stuff. And they like invented stuff and they discovered things. Oh yeah, and they went into some chemistry and like figured out some, new way, new underlying principle. Like, that's what was going down. And
Well, when I no, go ahead, continue.
anyway, I was close to the end of my point. My point is, it's like, I don't understand why it would be a point of derision for somebody to want to do that. Like, I kid you not, but when earlier I was talking about like making money and stuff, one of my like on my bucket list type things of like, what do I want to do if I get rich, like super rich, was literally to hire PhDs to come and teach me, like work with me one-on-one, in XYZ topic, and then like move on to the next one. Like that was one of my objectives. And that's why I get so much entertainment out of these morons on YouTube that claim, unless you went and got the freaking PhD, unless you went and to college and got this piece of paper, how could you know? It's like, you do realize that up until relatively modern era, if you had enough money, you hired the smart guys to come work for you and teach you and your kids. Like that's how it was done.
Right.
And so in the context of like what we have access to, whether it be for free or for, a lower sum of money, versus going back to school for the degree, it's like I can get access to the exact same information. Whether between books, online articles, podcasts, YouTube channels.
Well, John,
like there's so many different potential sources to get access to an equivalent, if not greater level of knowledge than people have had at any other time in history.
yes.
And yet somehow, even if you have the IQ points to comprehend it, you couldn't possibly understand what's being said. It's amazing to me.
Remember, I think it was last summer, you and I, we were going through that lecture series from, where was it from? Yale, on evolutionary theory, genetics.
Oh yeah. You're talking about the 36 lectures that we went through?
Yeah. But then you've got these evolutionists who are so close-minded to the fact that the opportunity is there today in 2021 with the access of all of this information on so many different topics. I mean, there's just no excuse. And I noticed that coming out of college after 4 or 5 years of college, and I took biology courses, I had a pretty strong foundation in these topics, although I didn't even know what creation was or intelligent design or young earth creation or anything. I just kind of blindly believed in evolution. But when I finally got introduced to the controversy of creation versus evolution, and I started watching all of these debates, mind you, I was more on the evolution side at the time. Okay. When I started watching all these debates, I must have watched 100 of them. And I noticed that right away about the creationist, about the Christian. They were a jack of all trades. In these debates, for example, you'd have the creationist who addressed every single point and went into a variety of topics that glorified God and demonstrated the creation position. While the university professor, who is the evolutionist or the PhD biologist or the botanist or whoever it was on that given debate, they had to ignore everything that was outside of their field and only hyper focus on one little point that pertained, I guess, to the field that they studied in. And I was like, man, every single debate, the evolutionist is getting smoked. And these creationists are jack of all trades. For example, today, a couple members of Team Dodgeball was scoffing at Dr. Robert Carter about peer-reviewed papers. And we pulled up, Rahmat and I, a bunch of peer-reviewed papers from Dr. Robert Carter that aren't specific to young earth creation. And he's got a peer-reviewed paper published on mitochondrial DNA diversity. I mean, I'd love to see Dodgeball Dan's peer-reviewed research on mitochondrial DNA diversity. So the whole point is, these PhDs that still hold to the creation model, they've got all these peer-reviewed publications. I mean, Dr. Sanford, we've had Dr. Rob Stadler on. The 2 times, well, in total, probably about 5 times with Dr. Rob Stadler, his presentations, they're all irrefutable. The last one I had him on, The Stairway to Life, about his book, undeniable. I mean, you can't be honest and also be an atheist after watching that. And they have no rebuttals to these presentations from these PhDs who are not evolutionists. I know I'm ranting here, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, point of the story is, when I came out of college and I started watching these debates and eventually converted, that was one of the first things I noticed, John. It was the creationist that was the jack of all trades. And I noticed that even with the evolution mindset.
Well, I think I agree with you. I think secondarily, a catalyst for the broader range of knowledge probably a portion of it stems directly from the insatiable curiosity that is sparked by the recognition, the realization that there is a cosmic mind behind it all, and that there must be ridiculously interesting things to learn, and that they were done with a purpose. And it's like, okay, I wonder what will be found today, kind of thing. It's why I get so much entertainment and also irritation at the ongoing talking point, which, Eric has been spewing in different formats in the side chat about like, oh, there's no research being done, nothing of substance is found, and all those kind of things. And it's like, well, I would wager that there is more than a few of the greatest minds that have ever lived who would beg to differ. Oh, wait, because they publicly stated that different things they discovered were the direct result of their recognition that there must be divine plan and logic and structure and engineering behind it. And it was only a matter of them having to figure out what it was. And then it led them to open their minds to find different, underlying principles of existence. I'm like, yeah, your talking point is dumb. It's ignorant.
But
it's been annihilated over and over again, and yet you continue to spew it.
Aren't they
in relation to this little microcosm of the overall history of humanity, and then act like somehow it is the ultimate defensive position for their myopical atheist worldview? It's honestly becoming a joke.
Well, it's funny because Gutsick Gibbon, I mean, her arguments have just devolved into, her level of argumentation is actually a line of evidence for genetic entropy. And I think I may start to use that as undeniable proof for genetic entropy, because another thing that these atheists constantly assert is that we are not, I guess, as creationists, making testable predictions. And it's so funny because, and I'm not going to go too much into it because it's technical, because a point that she made in the side chat was, no creationists are making predictions that can only be true if young earth creation's true. And yet that is exactly what we have been discussing for over a year, and they ignore it because they're living in a bubble. Okay, where Dr. Jensen, who they want to scoff at, has made a prediction that if mitochondrial DNA diversity and Y chromosome diversity only go back a few thousand years, then we should be able to detect genetic signatures in the uniparentally inherited DNA compartments. Because if they actually go back hundreds of thousands of years, then there should be so much genetic noise that it would be difficult to detect genetic signatures and essentially trace back the history of civilization. Okay. So he made that prediction. And guess what? Those predictions are proving to be successful. That's called a successful future testable prediction. And they don't want to deal with it. And it's so funny watching them run from it. He even put out an article recently going over his findings in terms of how amazed even he is, because he made that prediction going into his active research program, not really knowing the outcome. And even he's admitting that the amount of genetic signatures that he's finding and how easy it's been essentially to trace back the history of civilization. He's got a new book coming out about it. He's got a series about it. He's got a number of technical papers about it. I mean, that right there is the answer they're looking for. That's a future testable prediction that's been tested through an active research program. It's still being tested. And it's proving to be successful. And it can only be true if young earth creation's true, because there should be more noise if deep time evolution was true. I know that was a rant, but it literally, but watch, John. You'll still see Dodgeball Dan, Team Dodgeball. You'll still see them, though, over the next month or two. That's why they're irrelevant. They're only good for a laugh. It's more fun taking on, your Sideman Dans and stuff. We're having a blast doing it. But here's the thing. You're going to see, John, the same repeated talking points. Oh, no predictions. Oh, Jensen's made predictions, but he's not testing them. You'll see those types of comments. It's hilarious. Is it ignorance, John? I mean, what is it really? It's mind-boggling. It's demonstrating.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here's what gets me is if I had no idea what the hell I was talking about, number one, I wouldn't get involved in public discussions and then admit I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. I mean,
Right.
I don't understand it. Like, that's the antithesis of normal, rational, like just basic common sense. Like, can you imagine if somebody ran up into a debate about, I don't know, economics, right? And then they're sitting there discussing, quantitative easing, for example, right? And whether or not there's going to be, hyperinflation without the raising of interest rates by the central banks, just as a concept, right? And then somebody runs up and is like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I think that you're completely out to lunch, and interest rates, I don't know what that even means, but yeah. Yeah, so I'm not an economist, but you're definitely not. I mean, it's like, what? Nobody would do that. Or if they did, they'd be like, okay, let's please escort this person out of the building. And if there's any kind of resistance, let's put them in a padded cell. And yet, in the context of our very existence in the YouTube New Atheist netherworld, it is considered a element of credibility, like a strong position to take. I don't know. That's your position that you're proud of, is I don't know. You don't either. Okay. Well, I'm literally been talking about how I do think I know for the last 2 hours. Like, that's what we've been talking about. Were you not paying attention? Because I'm saying that I do have solid reason to think what I think, and to come to the conclusions I've come to. You're claiming there is no evidence, that I haven't shown you anything, even though I've just spent the last hour and a half showing you a bunch of stuff. And then you're just gonna be like, I don't know. It's like running around being like, I'm an idiot, and I'm super proud of it. And how dare you call me out for being an idiot? I mean, it blows the mind.
Here's another thing that blows my mind. For example, I just went over a pretty deep technical testable prediction that's been confirmed right over the last 5 minutes. And if you look in the chat, Andrew Cumming was one of them repeating the talking point. Okay. Has he responded to it? Rebuttal? No, he's just gone on to something else, right? Because that's what they have to do, is admit defeat. So another thing, I'm going to share screen real quick, John, just to shut somebody up. So another prediction that I brought up with Bill Tavis too was the cold slab prediction. Okay, that was made by Dr. John Baumgardner. Now, that can only be true if the young Earth creation model is true, because essentially the slab should have melted. But we'll give it to the evolutionists. They should have at least warmed up to the surrounding material. Okay, but no, they're cool, and it was a future prediction. So you've got Gutsy Gibbon in the chat saying, oh, where's the papers? Where's the data for this? So here's my book, Independent Origins, that I put out, the Independent Origins Handbook. So here's a section where I discuss the cold slab. And if you'll notice, all the papers, all the articles associated with it, if you actually click the original subduction as the driving mechanism of the Genesis flood paper by Baumgartner. If you click and look through that, which apparently is too hard for the evolutionists, and you scroll down to the bottom, Baumgartner's got all his sources. So it's just references upon references upon references. But here's the thing. You can take the horse to water, but they also want you to force him to drink. I mean, how many times has Speed of Sound asked for the same papers over and over again? For example, in my book here, I've got a section here on DNA function. So what I did to make it easy but you'll still get them asking, right? Look at this. References for function. Pseudogenes. There's a bunch of papers on pseudogenes. Papers demonstrating genetic entropy, validating genetic, like literally 10 pages of papers. DNA function on endogenous retroviruses. Most of them being secular papers. Okay. I mean, you just keep going. It's all here.
Well, we all know that that demographic, they ignore all the secular papers. They scan for the sole purpose of finding one non-secular paper and then say, oh wait, you founded your entire position on this one little paper while ignoring the other 75 that were also reached the exact same conclusion, but from a secular source. It's amazing to me. Like, I called out Downard on this premise twice, actually. And it's like, I predicted it. There it is. Okay. Did you read? Okay. Awesome. Here's all the other sources. Here's the corollary between the conclusions. And it was, all you do is go to Answers in Genesis. And I'm like, I literally don't go to Answers in Genesis. None of my stuff is from Answers in Genesis. Those clown shows, right? They went through. I have another document that had like a bunch of links and stuff. So I've got all my papers in the folders, right? I had a Word document that had a whole boatload of other links, just random stuff, right? And there's this whole tangent that they went off on about like, oh, he gets his, creationist sources. And I'm like, what the heck are they talking about? I go through there. I had a grand total of 2 links, 2 out of like 3 pages. Okay. Like 3 Google Doc pages of links, like link, enter, new link, enter, new link. Okay. Out of 3 pages, there was a grand total of 2. Okay. 1 Answers in Genesis, 1 to, I think, Reasons to Believe, right? And everything else, secular sources. All the papers, secular. None of them from no creationist journals, period. Okay. And I'm like, that's what you searched. Like, and then you claimed that nothing else that I had has any remote coherence to any of the arguments that are made, any of the positions I've put forth, or the conclusions that I've reached. Like, you're not biased at all. You are completely and utterly nonpartisan. 100%. 100%. You're like Nancy Pelosi.
Here's the thing. That's why I've pointed out so many times that it's just become satire with these guys, right? And the fact that they have an active mission to not engage us makes it that much better, because it's an admittance of defeat. And I don't know if they know it's as obvious. Okay, I want to share this for a good laugh. Okay, so this book, Special Creation, that I wrote, I know for a fact Speed has this one. Okay, so remember, Speed has this book. Okay, here's a few parts of the resource section. He has asked me for papers that apparently I've never provided him that are directly in the resources section of this book. This is the Special Creation book. Okay, you see all these sources, like pages and pages of, and everything he's asked for is here. And there's a solid mix of the creation papers that he asks for and the secular papers, whether it has to do with ERVs, pseudogenes, whether it has to do with ALU sequences or mutation rates, or papers from population geneticists talking. I mean, it's like 20 pages worth of references, and you've got your folder in the About section that's called For the Annoying People. It's because they're not actually looking for an answer, John. They're not actually being. Most of them, apparently, it seems like they're not willing to test their beliefs, test their position. That's why they oftentimes go back to the drawing board, or they only want to hyper focus on something. I don't know. I yield. It's just funny, John.
I'd say it was interesting to me. Like I was listening to the 2020 lecture series on Origin of Life a couple days or last week, and one of the lectures was John Sutherland, Origin of Life chemist, gets all this hype and such, and he's sitting there talking about like their models and all these kind of things. And when it gets to like the him and Shostak both, and like the whole how does the code come into existence, right? I mean, the current model they hold to is, oh, well, somehow 10 of them formed, and then we got 7 more at some point, and then the final 3 hopped on at the end of the codons,
Right?
to amino acid matching, right? And I'm just like, really? That's your position? Like, so you didn't have a working code is basically what you're saying, and it just magically formed itself, and then at the last minute the final things that you need just hopped in. like congrats, bro, that's awesome. Like that's an amazing story. That's an awesome just so story. I mean to think about that, when you look at the functional proteins and the polypeptides, they need more than just 10 amino acids, right? The vast majority of proteins use all of the amino acids, right? Or like you might not have one, but the vast majority of them have all of them, right? Especially when you're talking about the more complex ones, for sure, right? And it's like, okay, so you recognize that at some point you do have to have the complex ones in order to have self-replication, all those kind of things, and have your protocells and so on and so forth. But you're not, your whole model that you're trying to claim to somehow circumvent the complete irrationality of it ever forming by itself anyway, you're arguing that you don't need all those things that you know you do need. Like, that doesn't make any sense, man. Like, it's, oh, let's just gloss this over and be like, oh, well, 100 million years might have gone by and you didn't have everything you needed, but 101 million, man, those last 3 just hopped on board. Like,
it's
so your deep time is like not in your favor, right? Like, not in your favor in this context at all.
Deep time, they seem to think, helps them in terms of abiogenesis, in terms of universal common ancestry. And they love to run to deep time because time, as Kent was saying, which cracked me up in his debate with Atheist Jr., time is the atheist pacifier. When you remove it from them, they cry, right? And because they look to time, like you just pointed out, for origins, they look to time for universal common ancestry. Bill Tavis, when he was cornered in the debate, he looked to time. He suddenly went to time. It's like, that ain't going to help you. Okay. Time is not the hero of the plot. Erica, in my third debate with her, tried to run to time as well. When it comes to ancestry, you can have quadrillion years, but based on what we know about genetic change and mutation accumulation, the more time you give them, the more what, John, do you get? The more extinction, the more degeneration. Apparently, extinction is evolution to those that want to believe pond scum evolved into people. So time is no help to them either.
Man, I'd say there was a hilarious interaction the other day. I forget whose channel it was. I think it might have been Atheist Jr. But Otangelo, there was some dude I didn't recognize was on there, and Otangelo was there. Of course, they were all attacking Otangelo. And this guy's like, Otangelo brought up something about abiogenesis. And this guy goes, I'll answer this one to everybody. And he went off on this whole tangent like, it's already accounted for, and like we already have protocells, and yeah, like, of course, as you know, we all know Atangelo was about to have a aneurysm listening to these stupid, ignorant talking points from this guy, and he then proceeded to like go down the whole like abiogenesis is plausible. There were trillions of simultaneous actions going on and he goes for 14 billion years. Well, I'm in the side chat. Of course, I'm talking a little trash to him, and he starts telling me and Otangelo that we don't know what we're talking about. We're just like ignorant religious people, And I'm like, yeah, dude. So current timeline, 4.5 billion for the Earth, maximum of 500 million for life to form.
Mm-hmm.
So you might want to use Google, bro, because you just adamantly told us how ignorant we were, while simultaneously claiming that you had 14.7 billion years to work with on Earth. Like, that's not even the atheist world. Like the evolution world.
And
well, that was kind of funny in my debate with her, that she did try to go down that same rabbit hole, and I'm like, no, max 500 million. She denied it initially too, as I recall.
But then she admitted it.
She conceded. She conceded. In fairness to Erica, she did concede.
Well, yeah, it's just it's really sad at this point that these atheists are still going strong after how many, John, PhDs of all kinds have we had on our channels for some amazing presentations demolishing abiogenesis and showing, or I should say, demonstrating just how many chicken and egg problems abound that cannot be solved. As in, once you think you've solved one, you've got 5 others. And they pretty much just either backed off from it, they want to ignore it. But the point is, just an indefensible position. I mean, who wants to hold to a position that is so implausible? I mean, yeah, well, what are your thoughts? I just find it fascinating.
Well, if your entire worldview is dependent upon this being true, I mean, let's think about this. Just be blunt. In spite of the claim by many atheists on YouTube, at least, that evolution has nothing to do with my atheism. Like, okay, let's just be blunt. If you cannot exist without an intelligent agent who must exist prior to you, is necessary for you to exist, and you extrapolate this to like, oh, I'm in a fine-tuned universe that like, it's more rational that the intelligent agent would also not only be external to me existing, it would be external to the universe, and for the universe to exist, in order for me to exist. If that is true, then theism kind of makes a lot of sense, and atheism is just dumb. That's the position they're in.
Yeah.
And
here's the thing. When they say evolution has nothing to do with their atheism, they're lying. I'll tell you why. Because
hang on one second, Andrew. I'm wrapping this up in like no more than 15 minutes. I got to pass out. So if you want to come in and back up your claim, come on in. Go ahead, man.
So, from my interaction, and especially lately over the last 6 months, incorporating abiogenesis arguments into my opening presentations, so far every debate I've done that in, the atheist just ends up conceding it. Well, we don't have an answer now, and who knows, maybe we'll never get an answer, but we still have evolution. Can't deny evolution. So that is admittance that, yes, they depend on the evolution because, well, we don't care about the origin of life. We don't care that abiogenesis is just a disaster right now in terms of abiogenesis research. But, we got the fossil record, and we've got, the universal common ancestry that we can. So, yeah, they are leaning on that but essentially the runners at the start of the race have fallen over and died. There is no race, guys. Okay, there is no evolution. And that's why, John, given the failure of abiogenesis, that's why what we talk about, the front loaded capacity for the changes that we see, that best explains the data, not evolution. They've lost already at the starting line of the race. There's no race to discuss. So yeah,
it's a sad day. It's a sad day for them. It's kind of interesting. I'm trying to find it real quick. Let's see. Yeah, I think this is my original. I wonder what I did with my original opening statement for my first ever debate. I don't know what I did with it, but I had a line in there. The fruit of the poison tree. And that is what biological evolution is. It is nothing but the fruit of a poison tree. You cannot account for chemical evolution. It is not remotely plausible. And the ultimate irony for me is they try to act like biological evolution is not also chemical evolution. Because they love to claim it's not the DNA, it's in amino acids. They're nothing but chemicals. It's just chemicals. Okay, cool. It's chemical evolution then.
Exactly.
So let's go.
Exactly.
And let's get into the implausibility of this stuff. It's kind of one of the things that I was talking with Dr. Tour about. And he kind of brought that up. And he's like, I don't really get into evolution all that much, but when I look at what they claim happened, and I think about that from a chemistry perspective, I'm just like, that's not plausible. When you think about just the sheer number of chemical modifications that are necessary to achieve these new outcomes. It's like, this is not plausible. He's like, I sit there and think about it from the context of like, could I do this? If I know what I need to do, could I pull it off without like all these tools and all these different components, right? And it's like, not a chance. There's no way. There's just no way you could do it. And no, I might be able to do. I say we can't even do half of it with the stuff that we have right now, and we can't make the same kind of modifications. And I don't know. People just don't want to address the underlying implications of the world. I mean, because let's just be honest at this point. We're talking about a worldview that is. It's kind of funny. Darth Dawkins cracks me up. He goes so hardcore on people. It's hilarious.
Oh, I know.
He needs to calm down a little bit. But he makes a great point with okay, my worldview is ultimately dependent on God as a primary source, right? If that is not your worldview, then number one, you're positively contradicting me. But on the flip side, you still need to come up with an explanation for the foundation of your worldview. And I think that's something that a large portion of the atheists, like, that's why this gets so worked up and so desperate to avoid answering, giving a straight answer to the questions when he goes down that rabbit hole, because it's like, there's no way around it other than to be like, I don't have any foundation for my worldview other than flimsy things like magic. Oh, wait, you mean chance? Oh, yeah, chance. Okay, got it. Fully undirected process. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. So random chance. Got it. No, it's not just chance. Yeah, it is. That's where it keeps coming back to. It's like the whole thing with like the way the nucleotide or the base pairs bond to the backbone, right? Like the ribose. There's no chemical reason for them to bond in a specific order. Like, if there was, then we wouldn't have the ability for unique sequences.
Right.
So when you go back to like, how does the genetic sequence form? Unless it's done through directed process, it is 100% random.
Well,
they dance and dodge and do everything in their power to avoid that. That is the reality. You're at random.
It is the reality. It's a reality that they do dodge. It's very difficult to get them to answer one simple question oftentimes. And you know what? I'm just gonna. It's kind of based on what you're talking about when it comes to abiogenesis, but I've got this slide here because it goes over one of the. I believe this one was Sarfati, but just this paragraph alone, okay, is a fatal blow to their little just so story. How DNA is transcribed into mRNA with RNA polymerase, then translated into a protein in the ribosome with tRNA adapter molecules. This protein is then escorted by chaperones into a chaperonin so it folds correctly. All this machinery is itself encoded in the DNA, but the DNA can't be read without this decoding machinery, a vicious cycle, a vicious circle, or chicken and egg problem. Furthermore, most of these processes use energy supplied by ATP, produced by the motor ATP synthase. But the ATP synthase motor can't be produced without instructions in the DNA, read by decoding machinery using ATP, a three-way circle, or perhaps an egg nymph grasshopper problem. But all of this, by chance, for no reason at all. And it's essentially why they, from my experience, avoid it all altogether. Is it? See, us as Christians, as theists, John, we can look at this, we can study the DNA molecule, we can study genetics and biology, and we can glorify God, and we can be amazed at such amazing design. We can humble ourselves. It takes humility for that. And it's the pride of the evolutionist. It's the pride of the naturalist that doesn't want to admit to that. And I think that's where a major, major problem lies, is in pride, just as the Bible would tell us, really.
Well, I would have to agree with that. I don't even know, man. The point you're making about the incredible intricacies, interdependencies, the unique and the novel technology components, mechanical piece components. I mean, all these different things that are necessary for life to exist. I mean, it's, to me, when you really contemplate, and like I was watching looking at some animations of like how the ribosome is working, like things they're discovering, and relatively recently, like last couple of years, and finally been able to start visualizing in relation to like how the tRNAs are being able to move through the ribosome, and the dual hinges in the tRNAs that work with the ratchet effect. Not the figure. I use these words all the time. They make fun of me. It cracks me up. Little Atheist Junior and his like supposed impersonation of me. Literally. Well, I have to break it down because we're dealing with freaking morons who are like, "Oh, you mean analogy or metaphor? It's analogy or a metaphor. You don't actually mean it's actually what you're saying it is." Like, yeah. So that's why I use the word literally, to make it so that there's no way for you idiots to be like, "Oh, you didn't actually mean that because you didn't say that it was literal. We thought you were just meaning it was an analogy." Anyway, the way that those hinges bend at the appropriate times in conjunction with the ratchet effect is how it's how the elongation is pulled off. like if you don't have this, you're screwed. So this whole like, oh well, we didn't have to have a like completed tRNA, like it can be like a broken down tRNA will be fine. And oh, we don't need to have all the pieces of the ribosome to be able to do all this stuff. Like we can work without it. And it's like, oh really? Well, your experiments are showing the opposite. But that's just me.
Yeah, it's well, here's one thing that comes to mind, because you and I were talking the other day about modifications, and if the capacity is there, if it's pre-existing to modify and to result in adaptive episodes, okay, that's not an example of anything novel and meaningful. And we use you had a good analogy from computers, and I was looking to an analogy from phones. If you look at phones from 100 years ago versus now, okay, there's been a whole lot of novel information. A phone now, the phone I'm holding in my hand, as you know, has the capability of all these different apps. You can go on the internet. It's mind-bogglingly complex. Compare that to the first phone 100 years ago, whatever. There's been a lot of novel information. Or a car today with your nav, because a lot of evolutionists will say, well, what do you mean by novel information? What would be an example of that? A car today with a navigation system and a car 50 years ago that didn't have a navigation system or a backup camera, that car did not have the capacity for those features. Those were additions. Those were novel. But what we see in the biological world, we don't see those types of novelties gained. We actually see analogous to the phone, where if I wanted to, I can go into my Play Store and I could download the YouTube app. I can download whatever. I could download a million things. Okay, essentially, that's not novel information. That capacity to download that app was built into the phone. And that's actually what we see in the biological world, especially with epigenetic adaptation. The capacity for change via the environment is already there and front-loaded. I always show paper after paper, dozens of papers where they admit rapid evolution. When you read the paper, it comes down to epigenetics. It comes down to rapid change via the environment, not expected by evolution, right? Because a lot of times it's due to epigenetics, which is not necessarily a mutation. It's a whole extra layer of information. That's not adding anything novel. That's not going to take your fish to fishermen. So what we don't see is the addition of a navigation system, the addition of a backup camera. We see modification based on the pre-existing capacity to do so. So I just find that interesting because evolution, large-scale evolution, needs those types of additions. If they want us to believe the single-celled like ancestor evolved into a whale, I yield. Go ahead, brother.
Well, one of the things they don't seem to comprehend is like, or if they may comprehend the concept and just like refuse to accept the plausibility of this. Like, okay, let's assume from the front-loaded model, you're starting with the most bad to the bone, souped up Jeep of all time, right? It can go off-roading, you can drive on normal roads. It's like, it's badass, right? Deck to the nines. It's got the snorkel, all that stuff, right? It's awesome. That's what you started with. Now you're on the spare tires. The suspension is crap. You snapped off your snorkel and you're firing on, 5 of, 8 cylinders or something, right? Like, that's what we're talking about. And they're like, no, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like, so do you recognize that it looks like things were bigger than us in the past? Like the things that you call our predecessors were bigger, had better bones, bigger heads. We know they had bigger genomes. Like, we've got people running around being like, oh, well, macroevolution can happen through gene loss.
Oh, man. What do you say to something like that?
I don't even know.
Lose it all till you gain it all.
All I know is that ramen is on like serious super sticker. Okay, I think at some point we may have to stage a super sticker intervention on ramen because I think he may be getting addicted to super stickers. Ramen, do we need to have an intervention to help stem your super sticker addiction? I mean, while I greatly appreciate it, I don't want to be that guy who like takes advantage of the the drug addict who's like off the life of the party and throwing the drugs around, but
it's
a take care of a big picture.
the more super stickers result in the more coffees that I drink, which results in the more sleepless nights. And it's downhill. John, you can give me a coffee intervention and we'll give Raman a super sticker intervention all on the same night. What do you need an intervention for? John, you need an intervention because you've been demolishing atheists and forcing them into retirement because 99.9% of them are terrified to debate you. Can't even find you someone willing to debate. You force them all into retirement. They're all in hiding from you, John.
Well, the irony is that they're running around ad nauseum claiming that I'm afraid to debate Erica when I've already debated her twice.
Right. Yeah. I've debated her
7
hours.
Yeah. I mean, it's like we've had multiple conversations and it's like, you're afraid to debate Erica. How does that make any sense when I've already debated Erica?
Right.
Like, how am I afraid to debate somebody I've already debated? That doesn't make any sense. Like, that's the antithesis of logic.
That same thing was happening to me for a while, a couple of years ago. I had like 4 or 5 debates with CRISPR. If you go to my debate playlist, I think I've got about like 8 or 9 hours of just debate with CRISPR, the king of semantics, And I think it was like 6 months later, oh, you're avoiding CRISPR or something. Maybe if he's in like a speed of sound channel. It's like, I've literally had 9 hours worth of conversation with the guy. There's nothing more for us to talk about. Eventually you got to know when enough is enough. So yeah, that's just hilarious. You're scared to debate Erica, LPP. Meanwhile, you've debated her twice. Oh, yeah.
Why would you debate T-Jump? I've already debated him twice. You debate Skylar, already debated him. Like, it's like, come on, man. Give me somebody a little bit better.
Somebody new. And that's what I'm excited about is we've got some new prospects.
George says, super sticker. Appreciate it, George. Will Gutsick Gibbon debate Joseph Hubbard? I think that would be an epic debate right there.
Yeah, that would be another, unfortunately for Team Dodgeball, another loss for Team Dodgeball, because Gutsick, she's been forced into retirement. I mean, she's been running from the skilled, the informed, the educated young earth creationist. Could you imagine John McKay? He could take on the entire staff over at Team Dodgeball Incorporated. And I love John McKay and Joseph Hubbard because those guys go into a debate to debate. I mean, you just see it. I mean, they're there.
Hubbard, his most recent one, that was an utter annihilation.
that was amazing. That was one of my favorite. What, man?
I mean, he did. I mean, of course, the challenge. I mean, the opponent was nothing much, but I mean, he just completely annihilated him. It was brutal. It's like, dude, I tell you what, man. I just don't understand it, man. I do not. The level of beatdown these guys take.
I know, and
then come back for more.
Think about the last. Well, think about the last month of debates. I mean, the debates you've had, the Joseph Hubbard debate, the last debate, I mean, Ken Hovind, he's been on a great winning streak. That Science Side Up Erica had on her channel, supposed to be some big shot. I mean, Kent just rolled right over her. I mean, I think she said 3 words the entire debate. The poor girl got demolished. Poor Bill Tavis, of course. But yeah, it's just how many times do the supporters of Pawns Come to People Evolution have to watch their top dogs get demolished before they realize it's a position
I think
not worth holding to?
A portion of it stems from in their Fantasyland bubble, they think that they actually did okay.
Possibly.
Not all instances. In some instances, they realize like, oh yeah, we just got annihilated. Others, it's like, I think very often the beatdown is so bad that they do like a complete 180, and it's like That wasn't an annihilation. We actually beat them. They were just making up so much stuff. Yeah, no. Our guy couldn't actually respond because what the creationist was saying was just so out there. It was so whacked out that there was no coherent response. Yeah. That's why they had no comeback. They had no comeback the entire time because what they were being there was nothing to respond to. There was nothing to respond to. No arguments were made. It's done. It's over. It's done. That's how I feel like every interaction that Otangelo has. They're like, you don't even know what you're talking about. You're just making things up again. Like you just made stuff up again. You posted a link to your website, and it's like, yeah, if you click the link, you can go like read the citation, and I've got the links to the papers.
No, that's too much work for them.
No. All you want to do is link over your little chat board, and it's like, yeah. So the link.
Well,
I've quoted the source and the link. You can click the link to get over to it. You know.
Well, speed of sound though, I'll give him cred. He's one who has admitted that he's been demolished every time. That's why he won't engage us anymore on our channels. His excuse always is, oh, they catch me when I'm tired. Apparently all the debates that the one that I moderated with you and him and Neff, I debated him twice. Actually, that's a funny thing too, is Speed and I have probably had 5, maybe 6 conversations, but apparently I'm always avoiding Speed after 10 hours of discussion with him.
Yeah, you went through a little phase where you were like always over with Speed of Pudding. And I'm like, why?
I'm scared of him though, John, because I haven't been over there in a while, so apparently I'm scared.
Well, what's funny is the other day I heard him on his channel talking about, like, I think it was him and might have been Walking Fish. I don't know. They wanted to debate me on MDD. And I'm like, I don't really have. I taking on Pudding again might be entertaining. I don't know.
It'd be fun. It'd be fun. Now I will say this, Erica, she thinks she's relevant. Okay, because looking in the live chat, I've already got somebody who. See, I don't find Gutsy Gibbon to be all that good of a debater. I mean, she's very much hyper-focused. And when you press her on arguments, it all comes down to, I'm not of this, I'm not of that, I don't know. So Joseph Hubbard being such a good debater, why waste him on someone like Erica? So I've got a couple good prospects actually for Joseph Hubbard's next debate, which is probably going to be in August. David McQueen would prefer to find a geologist or geophysicist for him, so we'll see. But there's not this specialness of Gutzik, and I'd rather just not. It would be an easy win. I mean, Gutzik and anytime she's debated an informed creationist like us, she got demolished and schooled. So the goal is to find now a good debate was Professor McQueen versus Jordan as well, because they debated on, I guess, something that was Jordan's specialty. I mean, if it was Erica in there, it would have been her saying, I don't know, the entire time. So that's the point. We're not going to fall to their demands. Oh, only if it's on a neutral channel. It's like, listen here, we'll find somebody else. We don't need you. So yeah, I just want to put the chat, the damage control and the emotion and the snow flakiness is just, it's not hereditary, or it's not, we can't catch that, can we, John?
Man, I tell you what, I do think that snowflake is maybe a contagious disease.
Yeah, good point. Because think about
hey, let's listen for a second. So, given the fact that the formation of a crystal is proof of evolution beyond doubt, I mean, I could definitely see how the expansion of a crystalline structure as you become a snowflake is totally plausible.
Right. You know what's funny about Gutzik? She keeps pretending that she's not listening, right? She's saying she's watching a flick. I mean, she's been damage controlling all night in that live chat. I'd love to know what flick she's watching And I'd love to know how much of it she's even retained. Oh, I'm watching a flick. Meanwhile, she's going a mile a minute, pure damage control. I mean, it would be a scary thing to wake up an evolutionist, wouldn't it, John? If you woke up an evolutionist, what would you do? Would you ever debate again? Would you ever have an open mic? I mean, would you be embarrassed?
If I woke up as an evolutionist?
Yeah, you woke up and you believed
no.
and strawberries were
well, I mean, since I would have, by necessity, I would have had to have suspended a gigantic portion of my cognitive function. That probably means that my common sense would have also been somewhat deprecated. And, you know, I would come into a debate like John Gleason and be like, so what's the definition of deprecated? It means 10. What's the number? Like, pretty sure it's 10, but that's not the only usage of the word. That's like an extreme etymology of the idiom, whatever it is. Yeah, that whole. I tell you what, I still haven't gotten over that. That was some pretty good entertainment. I was cracking up when he went down that rabbit hole. Like, we're going to argue over this in a debate, really? What's the definition of decimated? Yeah. Like,
godless engineer.
Yeah, I tell you what, man. So I don't know what the YouTube atheist. Okay, this is proof beyond all doubt that the cognitive ability of the YouTube atheist community is like in full scale free fall, because John Gleason has been being put on as host and co-host of multiple like different, not just like the same show multiple times. He's being put on multiple shows on the same day. I'm just like, what?
Yeah, they must be getting pretty
No, you can't be putting this guy on more than once a day. It's so bad. It's so bad.
Well, remember I was telling you last stream, the guy who, and it's good because he's a critic, this guy that I've set up several debates with. Like, he's probably going to debate all of us within the next couple months. You, myself, Naf, Kent. I'm debating him on the 11th. So he's a big human evolution guy. And when he first contacted me to get involved in some debates, I told you this last stream. I found it funny because he pointed out as a way to, I guess, impress me, or, you know, think of him as a somebody worth debating. He literally said, and don't worry, you know, I'm not an idiot like godless engineer. Point is, even the atheist side is embarrassed by people like godless engineer and people like, you know, there's a number of them, but yeah, it's just funny. You forced him into retirement, John. He's never been the same since that. That was epic.
Well, it's the thing though, he hasn't retired. He's like doubling down.
In his mind, he hasn't.
It's the most epic stuff. I mean, we gotta go long for him on this one.
In the information age we currently enjoy, to me, it's a completely implausible concept to conclude that HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, WordPress, apps, or any of the other aspects of technology that utilize software, that they could possibly come into existence without programmers and designers being required.
I agree, that would be crazy to assert, but luckily that's not what we're asserting. That's not what anybody's asserting here. It's only you that's claiming that evolution would entail this. So you're basically building a straw man argument against people that already accept evolution and are misrepresenting their arguments for evolution. You see, the biggest difference here is that we have natural explanations for like why DNA looks the way that it does, why it operates the way that it does, and why the diversity of life that we have here on Earth exists. We have natural explanations for why these things happen. We don't have explanation for why like PHP exists, other than somebody designed it. So what you're really doing here is you're comparing bananas to horses here.
I like SFB mod says that guy's not an engineer. No, I mean you can just listen to him for about 10 seconds and realize.
Well, I mean, yeah, but then he takes it a step further.
But it is not a code. It's a chemical. It's deoxyribonucleic acid. It's an acid. I don't understand why you think it's a code. DNA is no more of a code than Diet Coke and regular Coke.
How many times do you think he had to say deoxyribonucleic acid before he got it right? How many takes you think? Darn.
Well,
oh. Reshoot.
Well, I mean, given the fact that I jack up that word, probably a lot.
Yeah, man.
I mean, it's so bad. I honestly, at this point, I'm making fun of him right now. I shouldn't do that. It's not very Christ-like of me to be making fun of the man. I apologize. Sort of. It's just like, man, at this point when I like watch him on some of these streams, and not just him, like I watched a stream with Shannon Q the other day. She went into like full scale, like shrieking, hysterical meltdown.
Worse than Bill Tavis?
Oh yeah. Oh no. I mean, when I mean like full scale shrieking meltdown, I mean that literally.
Oh, man.
Like voice raised.
I'm not
just
surprised.
like, "Ah!" Like, what is happening right now? She's in full scale flip out. And I tell you what was the other thing that's crazy is I listened to her debate with her first debate with Darth Dawkins at 2x speed. And it was pretty funny. If you listen to that at 2x, you can tell how shrill she was. I don't mean just from like voice being high. I mean like the structure of the sentences and the volume and everything.
Well,
and it was just epic, man. Listening to that stuff, I was cracking up. I'm like, man, if Darth ever managed to maintain the level of calm he did with Shannon Q in that debate, he would annihilate everybody. Everybody would go into full scale freak out. Of course, he doesn't, and he like starts flipping out on people and don't overtalk me. Don't overtalk me. And they're like, excuse me. Don't overtalk me.
Yeah, I will say he cracks me up. See, we're here on YouTube facing off against the most militant of evolutionists and atheists. I mean, that entire camp of evolutionists like Pelagia, Shannon Q, Arn Ra, Vice Rhino, like that entire camp of evolutionists. For one, they read their scripts and put out their videos. I mean, I've challenged Pelagia, who's terrified to debate the topic because he knows he'll be exposed. He won't attempt to defend bacteria-like organism to biologist evolution for his life. But what I was trying to say is we're dealing with the most militant evolutionists on YouTube, right? And your everyday agnostic though that you deal with, I know at least in my personal life, just in the workplace or family or friends or random people at get-togethers, when I talk to them and they say at first, well, you know, I don't know if I believe in God or whatnot, it takes maybe a 20-minute, 30-minute conversation for them to admit to me, wow, that is silly. Apples and whales related. Wow, that made a lot of sense, what you said. That's the majority of encounters I experience. Open-minded people, I'm not saying they convert right away, but most people recognize the stupidity of naturalistic origins, of universal common ancestry. And I think they probably most of the time just leave and don't think about it again. They're not militant. They're not out to fight God. They're not out to fight creation. You know, that's this small little group of YouTube atheists that we love to expose. But have you noticed that too? The majority of people, they just go on with their days. They don't really care. They don't hate God. They're not actively fighting against him. And when you have a conversation with them, they typically admit, yeah, evolution sounds kind of silly. You know, do you have those experiences, brother? Oh, John fell into a black hole. Yeah, Godzilla Freak says, same thing here, SFT. Most people aren't committed. Yeah, I'm telling you, in the workplace, a number of jobs, that I've had, a lot of coworkers that I've talked to who grew up in public schools and they're not Christian and they consider themselves atheist. As I said to Simon and Dan, if I had $1 for every time I got one of them to say after a 20, 30-minute conversation, wow, evolution's stupid, I'd be a trillionaire. I'm serious. Most people recognize it. It's only your Gutsick Gibbons and your Dodgeball Dans, these people that have so much invested in being related to a banana plant. They're the ones that'll fight it to the death and make their life goal to fight creation. John, did you fall asleep, brother?
No, I'm here. No.
Oh, okay.
But it
I lost
is.
there for a bit.
Well, I was just listening. It is time for me to go. It is time for me to go to bed, though.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, your point on the fighting it to the end. It's like, yeah, man. It's definitely more logical, plausible, and probable to conclude that the architect was necessary for your freaking house to exist, and
Amen.
that the electrician and the plumber and the builder and everything else was necessary for all the different parts to get put together, the design to get put together. That's the more rational conclusion. We view this as the rational conclusion in every single other possible scenario as at some point being the root necessity, except in the most important one, our very existence. I mean, if that doesn't in and of itself showcase beyond doubt the level of desperation to avoid the obvious that is atheism, and therefore its little, special needs talking point, i.e. evolutionary biology, I mean, it epitomizes all of those things. But anyway, well, man, I've greatly enjoyed our conversation. Any last words before we wrap up?
Yeah, the last word I'll say is great conversation. It's been a lot of fun. I've still got a few things on the counter upstairs. I was actually going to make myself a nice nighttime sandwich, so I'll probably do that after this, but this was worth it. And what I'll say is, oh no, I think I forgot what I was going to say. I had something at the tip of my tongue. I can't remember now. Oh, well, tomorrow we've got Professor David McQueen at 6:00 EST, and George will be there too. George the man. So make sure everybody brings their questions. And I just remembered, John. Okay, I knew it'd come to me. So last thing I'll say is we were sitting here having this talk for however long you've been going on for 2.5 hours, and evolutionists who are scared of their own shadow, such as Just a Walking Fish. He had his opportunity 2 nights in a row. He was even in the live chat, and he was on Speed of Sound's channel talking about how LPP, he seems to avoid discussion with me. He won't talk to me about this or that. And the opportunity was here. He didn't join. Gutsick Gibbon didn't join. And it's been fun. It would have been a lot more fun also to demolish some evolutionists, but I guess if I was an evolutionist, I probably wouldn't want to jump in here with us either. So that's my last words, brother.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, yeah, it will be. I will look out for the next trash talk from Walking Fish. See how much to back up his bovine scatology. But anyway, well, folks, I greatly appreciate you all tuning in for the another night of madness. And Ramen, as always, greatly appreciate you for your expressing your sticker addiction. George and everybody else who did super chats, greatly appreciate you. Everybody else who joined us and engaged in side chat and was really helping to make this fun and keep everybody engaged and kind of turn it into a level of entertainment. Greatly appreciate you all. What's the takeaway? Got N Green showing up. Linguistes becoming a regular. SFB mod. Haven't seen Joel in a while. He's been able to come out of the. I know he's been hyper focused on his new efforts and all the AI and stuff they're working on. Oh man, SpongeBob Imagination made an appearance. What's up? Man, we got
all crew.
Andrew Kaufman came on over as well. Andrew, good to see you. Redefine the Living.
We got,
of course, gotta give a shout out to even though she had us on mute the whole time. Gutsick Gibbon came in. I know Andrew stayed up. We know Andrew stayed up past his bedtime, so he's gone. I think Tape Deck made an appearance. Man, we got all sorts of folks that Protract's been in. Oh man, Protract's been talking some big game tonight in a good way. I always enjoy reading his comment stream. But anyway, folks, like I said, as I always like to say, as you analyze all the pieces of evidence, the arguments that are put forth, and you contemplate the things that are necessary for your very existence, I do hope that you will take the time and use your brain and the God-given skills and gifts that you have to ultimately reach your end conclusion about what is necessary for your existence, and then ultimately what is the most logical, plausible, and probable explanation for your very existence. Have a great night, y'all, and just keep on trucking.
God bless.